It's been the worst day for Victoria so far in the pandemic. There are 127 new cases and a man in his 60s and another in his 90s have died from the virus. As the state struggles to bring the outbreak under control, New South Wales has decided to shut out Victorians, and that's thrown border communities into chaos. The majority of Victoria's new cases are far from the border. They're in hotspot suburbs in Melbourne's northwest. 26 more people in Melbourne's lockdown public housing towers have tested positive, and that takes the total in that cluster to 53. James Oaten begins our coverage.
This is a supply that I have.
After days in lockdown, Gourmet Mengisha's shelves are starting to look a little bare.
A couple of soy milk, tuna, chickpeas.
For almost 24 hours, I haven't had any supplies.
We still get essentials dropped off from friends and friends.
Many residents in high-rise public housing have had to rely on the goodwill of locals since going into lockdown.
The only thing we have received is this around midnight. I'm so hesitant to even touch it.
As the government tries to catch up in providing essential services to those most in need.
The only help I've received is 5 disgusting sausage rolls.
Until this moment, I haven't received any knock on my door or a call from authority regarding what's going to happen, what's the plan and when they're going to do testing.
The government's heavy-handed police response to shut down the towers without notice has been a major frustration for community leaders and those stuck inside the buildings.
This was unprecedented, if you like, in terms of the manner in which we had to respond, and now we're working through and planning to make it more smooth flowing as we're going along.
We are with them, we'll stick with them, and we will support them.
Tensions have been rising, and today police tackled a man who tried to flee the lockdown. It could be 2 weeks before anyone can escape. Residents have now received letters suggesting home detention would last until the 18th of July.
Once all 3,000 residents are tested, we will have more options based on data.
So far, 400 residents have been tested, but Victoria's record number of cases isn't just contained to these towers. There are now 77 cases linked to the Altaqua College at Truganina. There have also been cases at 2 new abattoirs in Melbourne's west, Pacific Meats Thomastown and JBS in Brooklyn. Over in the city's east, there's been another case at Camberwell Grammar School, taking that cluster to 4. And another Melbourne hospital is scrambling to deal with a positive case in a healthcare worker.
Why doesn't Daniel Andrews, just for once, admit that he's made a mistake, bring in the Australian Defence Forces and get them to fix the problem he's caused?
With so much attention on the 9 towers in lockdown, community groups are concerned about other public housing buildings, saying they're a disaster waiting to happen. But this time they want the response to be led not by police, but health officials.
I think it's a very real issue that the pandemic may well spread to other housing estates because of the density issues. We've seen similar issues in New York, in Queens, so we know that there's a real need to act and to act quickly.
James Oaten, ABC News.
For more, let's go now to our state political reporter, Richard Willingham at Treasury Place. Rich, these are alarming numbers. Is the government looking at a statewide lockdown?
Well, Mary, given there's so many numbers and increasing record numbers today, it's something the government cannot rule out. It's something the Premier said from day dot that he can't rule out further lockdowns. Even last week when he announced these 10 postcodes were being locked down, he said more could be added, and we saw that happen on Saturday. So given the numbers continue to climb, it's something the government is looking at, whether what the next steps is, whether more postcodes are added or whether we go wider. One area of particular concern is the city of Wyndham, which now has the second most active cases. Those cases have nearly doubled since Saturday, which is an area of real concern, yet no postcodes there are locked down. So with cases continuing to climb and the government bracing for the potential for more numbers to keep increasing, the possibility of further lockdowns are surely something that weighing heavily on the Premier and the government's mind.
And now we're officially closed off from the rest of the country with New South Wales' decision to close its border with Victoria. Rich, what does this mean for Victorians?
Well, simply means from tomorrow night, from midnight tomorrow, Victorians won't be able to cross into New South Wales. That border is being closed. This is because Victoria finds itself in a unique position within Australia with so many cases, while other states are trying to protect themselves from having really, really low numbers to back high numbers. So it really is about stopping this virus at the border. Now, this decision was made by the Premier, 2 Premiers and the Prime Minister earlier today. But just this afternoon, the Albury officials have confirmed they have got 2 suspected cases of COVID-19 in the area, including 1 person who recently returned from Melbourne, which is a big concern. Now, this decision was taken this morning. Here's what the Premier had to say a short time after that.
It is, I think, the right step to take at this point. That won't be a feature that goes on any longer than it needs to, and I'm grateful that it'll be enforced on the New South Wales side of the border, so that it's not a resource burden for us.
There's no doubt, in my view, that closed borders do cost jobs, but we are facing a significant spike in cases from Victoria.
You heard there from the Premier, this will be policed by New South Wales officials on their side of the border. For Victorians who are currently in New South Wales, they don't need to rush back because this is about keeping Victorians from crossing the border into New South Wales from midnight tomorrow night. Now, this will be a major problem for many people, many communities on the border in places like Echuca and Wodonga, where people regularly cross, and some special permits will be made available. Ashley Aldridge reports.
For communities along the New South Wales-Victoria border, crossing state lines is rarely given a second thought. But that's all about to change.
Most of our staff live in New South Wales and we are just into the border.
Wodonga Cafe owner Wasim Saliba isn't sure if he'll be able to stay open.
We're 200 metres into the borders, having to basically follow the Victorian rules just because where we are, having to, if not fully shut, semi-shut, it's devastating.
Albury Wodonga is the biggest centre on the border with a combined population of more than 100,000. Hundreds of kilometres from Melbourne, and with just 2 active cases, some feel they're being punished.
We've had our communities behaving appropriately and taking the correct steps, and we are being penalised by the actions of Melbourne.
New South Wales tourist towns popular with Victorian holiday makers have also been dealt a blow.
In this place, we record something like about 70% of our visitors coming from Victoria.
New South Wales says it will be easy for residents to get permission to cross the border. They should be able to apply for a permit from tomorrow, but locals are being warned to expect delays.
Anyone who feels that they will be impacted too much by this border closure, they're able to go to Service New South Wales, get a permit, and then with that one bit of paper, they'll have safe access.
For now, many are still wondering just how the border closure will work. Services such as the Paediatric Ward and Regional Cancer Centre are provided in Albury, as is the 24-hour emergency department, while women are only able to give birth at the Wodonga Hospital.
All of us here at Albury Wodonga, we're crossing the border sometimes 2-3 times a day.
Well, there's not much we can do really. Hopefully it won't last very long.
Just how long it'll last is anyone's guess. Ashley Aldridge, ABC News, Wodonga.
Well, the communities surrounding the Melbourne flats in lockdown are rallying to support those inside. An army of volunteers has been turning up with food and donated personal items, as well as toys for the children spending their school holidays in detention. But the delivery hasn't always gone smoothly, as Iskandar Razak reports.
A community is rallying. The Australian Muslim Social Services Agency is the focal point for those wanting to help the detainees.
Just create a line, boys.
But emotions were high as efforts to deliver help were slowed down by bureaucracy.
The community have gathered together, created resources, have donated money, donated culturally appropriate food, and are facing institutional barriers for greater than 24 hours of getting their food out.
About 500 people volunteered to help. Many were turned away to maintain physical distancing, but there was no stopping the lines of cars that came filled with food and sanitary goods.
I think that it's just important for the community to back everyone up and support.
If we want everyone to do the right thing, it's really important that we all pitch in.
I don't live in this area, but I just feel that we have a responsibility to look after each other.
Health professionals also came to offer their support.
We have people who can speak to the clients in their own language as well.
This is how tight-knit and close this situation actually is. The North Melbourne flats in hard lockdown are right there. They can see everything that's happening on the ground, the police response, as well as the community response here. Many of the detainees are children who attend the Venny Play Centre. It's been gathering activity packs for the children so they can draw, create and exercise their minds. It'll also run Zoom activities.
Running play sessions with these young people, dancing with them online and sending out art packs and doing art activities as well.
Milk, bread, fruit and vegetables were donated in tonnes today, and the volunteers say they're ready to gather more as it's needed. Iskandar Razak, ABC News, North Melbourne.